Hi, everyone. I'm Doug Black at Inside HPC. And today we have with us Doug Kothe. He is Associate Laboratories Director for Advanced Science and Technology and Chief Research Officer at Sandia National Laboratories. Doug is a longtime member of the HPC community and a veteran of the U.S. National Laboratories scene, starting his career in 1985. He worked for 20 years at Los Alamos National Lab and also has been at Livermore and at Oak Ridge, where, among other roles, he was a leader of the exascale computing project, which delivered the world's first certified exascale class supercomputer in 2022. Doug, great to be with you.
Thanks, Doug. It's great to be here. It's good to
Okay,
talk to you again.
super. So today's topic is working at Sandia. And the question for so many young and talented STEM graduates is weighing the decision between going to a national lab like Sandia over against pursuing opportunities in private industry. But let's start off. If you could tell us about the role of the U.S. national labs in the development of advanced HPC AI technology for scientific research, for national defense, and global competitiveness for the U.S.
Sure, Doug. As we know, the National Lab System really started right after World War II with Los Alamos Scientific Lab back then became the Los Alamos National Lab. And so, what we've seen over the past, it's like 80 years now. There are 17 DOE National Labs across the complex. It comprises tens of thousands of talented researchers. So, my own reflecting back on my own long 40-year career at four different labs, as you mentioned, you're exposed to tremendous breadth and depth of talent, incredible interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary talent. The DOE lab mission is very broad, tackling big science problems for the nation. Certainly, national security, which is a focus of Sandia here at Sandia, but economic security, energy security, discovery science. I think compensation is competitive, especially over the long haul. You get lots of opportunities to do different things. In my own career, reflecting back, kind of every 3 to 5 years, I've been exposed to new opportunities, often not plans that I made, but it's a great place to work and interact across many disciplines. In terms of uniqueness, DOE labs allow for really mission-driven research. As I noted, it's very interdisciplinary. You're exposed to and part of cutting-edge facilities, like you noted, Doug, in my background, high-performance computing facilities. Uh, you get a chance to participate in and even sometimes lead, for me, large-scale projects. In this case, the exascale computing project. DOE labs do interact in very mutually beneficial ways and collaborative ways with the private sector in terms of public-private partnerships. I think DOE Lab and staff at DOE Labs really get to have that opportunity. The focus really is on energy, national security, as you noted. I kind of view the career at a lab as you're being paid to learn. In other words, there are career and individual development opportunities that are just, I think, second to none. So really also allowed to pursue long-term research goals. Often in science and engineering, the payoff is years or decades, and so there's a tremendous opportunity there. And there's international collaborations that are important. In the case of computing, my own experience, interactions a lot with Europe and Japan. So those are just tremendous opportunities. Brings a lot of, I think, for me, joy and satisfaction um, in working at the DOE lab. And here I'm in my personally seventh decade, and I thought I would be retired by now, but I'm having the time of my life, and I have no plans in the near future as long as I feel like I'm being used and useful for the institution and in DOE overall.
Well, when this is a long standing discussion, but the or topic of discussion and debate, but the labs offer something that private industry can't, which is really this mission. It's very mission oriented, um, in the service of the country. If we're seeing enormous budgets and spending by some of the big tech companies uh,
Yeah.
into their compute infrastructures, but the we the labs still have the most powerful supercomputers in the world that nobody else can touch. So, talk about the mission and just the excitement of working in a setting like that.
Yeah, it is exciting, Doug. Certainly, DOE, we lean in and often lead in energy security, new energy technologies. I'm a trained nuclear engineer and had a chance to dive deep into two areas, fission and fusion, which are I think really needed now more than ever with the energy demands of things like AI. We do play a large role in the electrical grid, its security and stability. I think our sort of birthright and reason was really nuclear security and being able to maintain a stockpile for deterrence. The DOE is really on point with our DoD, Department of Defense colleagues for ensuring peace around the world with regard to deterrence. And so the the mission at DOE is incredibly important. I'm a little bit, maybe a lot biased. I think it's one of the most important agencies in our government, and we do get to interact with and collaborate with all of government. Let's just take computing and AI, for example, areas that I've been involved in. It really cross cuts, every almost every aspect of our lives now, but also certain almost every aspect of the public and private sector. And we've certainly seen this explosion in AI, which I think is a new sort of paradigm and tipping point for all of us. And that's really, I think, allowed us to capitalize on our public-private partnerships and lean in even more so than what we've done in the past in terms of working side by side with, as you mentioned, big tech. So it's a real exciting time. It's very fast moving, and we have a real sense of urgency for sure.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about some of the advanced project work going on at Sandia, and especially tapping into that AI for science theme, if you would.
Yeah, it's a good point. So let's talk a little bit about maybe I'll just brief a little about AI. So I remember being exposed to nonlinear neural nets in the late 1980s at Los Alamos and sitting back thinking, oh, this is interesting, but I'm not sure it's going to go anywhere. Well, of course, it has gone. And even back then, it led to some interesting research working with the private sector in terms of credit card fraud detection, which of course we're all very used to and reliant on when we get a phone call about, that purchase didn't look quite right, Doug. And so, it's really transformed. When I look at the explosion of AI, there's a few papers, seminal papers, one that came out in 2017 by Google that's getting about 50 citations a day, which is just in the science field is incredible. And certainly with large compute and lots of data now, the emergence of game-changing technology like transformers, large language models, reasoning models. Been some interesting work recently on being able to understand a little bit more about an inference result being more explainable. So, without getting into too much detail about all the exciting areas in AI, they're certainly being used and integrated into a lot of the project work at Sandia. And so you ask about some of the project work um, at Sandia. I just would say that, if we were to sit back and say, what are the two things most Sandia's most known for? Well, there's really dozens, but systems integration. We're an engineering laboratory where we integrate lots of components into a working system designed to meet up a specific mission. The other thing we're really known for that I didn't appreciate, frankly, Doug, until I came here, and that's microelectronics. The design, the manufacture, deployment of microelectronics, especially in harsh environments. And in fact, one could argue that Sandia either invented the clean room or was a large player. And we still have in our Mesa facility where we're doing, semiconductor manufacturing for Department of Energy and Defense. They're all over. And so in terms of large projects, we have lots of large projects, certainly in ongoing in microelectronics. Sandia is a designer of a lot of energy storage technologies known as thermal batteries. In addition to kind of overall systems integration, which may be a little bit vague, when I look at the breadth and depth of Sandia's work, just to kind of point out some areas where I feel like we really lead: cybersecurity, quantum computing, and in particular, advanced manufacturing, obviously nuclear security. I mentioned energy technologies, especially grid, and in the nuclear power space, safety. Um, we do have a sizable renewable energy effort in solar, concentrated solar, which is way cool. And certainly areas, other areas like climate security, national security, and nuclear security. I'm sorry, and global security. So we do have a number of ongoing projects, Doug, that are large in the sense of hundreds of millions of dollars per year. It's kind of a lot like ECP. So there's a fair amount of program and project management prowess here at Sandia to be able to execute these large projects and programs on time for our sponsor.
So, Doug, you were played a major role again in helping to deliver the first exascale system, which is still obviously from the frontier system at Oak Ridge. We have two other American exascale systems, but for a STEM graduate thinking about a career with one of the labs or with Sandia, looking ahead, what do you see? How do you foresee the supercomputing leadership supercomputing infrastructure that at the labs looking like over the next 5 to 15 years?
Yeah. So first of all, Doug, I don't see um, sort of traditional, I call it traditional multiphysics modeling and simulation, equation-based modeling and simulation going away in the near future. I don't see AI totally replacing, that particular area, which ECP really did push forward. ECP probably 10 to 15% of the resources were devoted to AI, but it was not the majority of the resources. But that said, so I do see traditional modeling and simulation continuing to play a role, consequential, delivering high confidence solutions that can be used to make very consequential decisions. So moving forward, um, I do see AI and ML playing a larger and larger role, certainly augmenting and accelerating traditional high performance computing workloads. In some cases, it may actually replace some of the workloads. As an example, the Department of Energy, weather is not the Department of Energy's mission. That's more for agencies like NOAA, et cetera. But we are seeing areas like weather being, more and more AI is playing more and more of a larger role. So can I look in a crystal ball in 10 years and sort of guess where, AI might really not just augment and accelerate, but potentially replace? No, I have my opinions, but for a STEM, an early career researcher in the STEM areas, computing in general, let me just broaden it to computational computer and data science, is a tremendously marketable skill that's now really required and used in almost every domain. I do think that AI is really changing the paradigm for how we develop software. Um, Depending on what I read, it could be anywhere from 20, 30 to 80% of our workload in terms of development is really being used with AI tools now. So I think that software development is fundamentally changing, and I think for the better to do things in a more kind of to be more productive. It doesn't mean that it's going to replace, in my mind, staff needing to go deep in this area and really know how to develop software and what good software looks like. So I think moving forward, It's just a very, very exciting time. We're seeing a lot of change with AI being integrated into HPC. I mean, one way to think about it, Doug, is there's HPC for AI and AI for HPC. In other words, AI tools and technologies can really help how we design, manufacture, next generation processors. It can be used to help us more efficiently operate high performance computing systems, et cetera. And frankly, the HPC community has and continues to lead, in my mind, fundamental applied math, cutting edge computer science, software architectures. And so that HPC skill set in the HPC community we're seeing being now directly applied into the AI space, in particular, sparse linear algebra, et cetera. So I think we really are seeing a convergence. In many ways, it's kind of already happened to bring those two communities together. I guess the other thing I would say is staff coming into Sandia, and I think in a lot of places, not just in the public sector, are pretty adept and trained at a pretty good level in what AI and ML technologies mean, how to develop them, how to use them. And so, we're finding a lot of folks, myself included, really leaning on our early career staff to help upskill, some of the mid and late career folks. So it's an important time to really integrate these different generations and learn from one another.
Collaborative, yeah. I guess that would be my last question. Tell us a little bit about the maybe the just the daily work conditions. I would imagine it's quite different from private industry in the sense that you know companies are always under the gun um, to deliver results quickly. Their companies are looking at the next quarterly results. That sort of shorter, I would imagine, a shorter term orientation. Whereas at the labs, it can be a bit more in depth. It's not quite so market driven or time driven. I'm imagining all this, Doug, but am I correct in that sense that and in that way this could be a very favorable sort of situation to be in if that's the correct. I'm not saying this right.
Yeah.
That could be very favorable sort of working conditions in a more collaborative, deliberate way. Is that the case?
Yeah, Doug, look, I think, and again, speaking for myself, there are pros and cons. So you're right in that, in my experience in my career, the time scales are have been longer than private industry. And I like to joke that I think that pressure and stress, often for folks like me, is more self-imposed. In other words, the DOE National Lab environment is a great one to work in. Now, that said, I think my hair went from blonde to gray to white when I led one of these endeavors because I had a lot of frankly self-imposed stress, meaning I really wanted to deliver and to succeed. So I think what we see with DOE staff, and of course I think we expect it, is being independent, self-driven, motivated, passionate about what we do, and I do see that. Now I say there's pros and cons. We need to, in the Department of Energy, at least in my experience, we need to move with a sense of urgency. And I think my experience in ECP, bringing in more agile processes and trying to execute in a sprint-like fashion, is something that really helped and something we need to do more of. I think you see that more in private industry, where the schedules are maybe shorter, and you're going after profit margins. And so in this case, I think at Sandia, in my experience at other national labs, is we can benefit a lot by working closely with private industry, kind of seeing how they work in with a more of a sense of urgency. We often are, I think, because we're scientists and we want to go deep into the details and understand all the details, which is why we're here. Sometimes we have perfection paralysis. We might be a little too risk adverse. And so these sorts of things, working closely with private industry has been very, very helpful because I think we need to learn how to move faster and quicker, and maybe deliver sometimes the 80% answer, not the 100% answer. That said, in software, I think agile and moving fast has been a recognized best practice, and we tend to do that. But I think in other areas, not just the Sandia, but across the complex, we're recognizing we can and should and need to move faster, especially in the area of national security and deterrence. We have to do that. So I agree. I mean, this is a great place to work. It's fairly low stress, unless you're driven a little bit too much, like myself. Yeah, so it is. Work here is great. You have flexibility in your hours. We expect people to work hard and to do their job. And what I see is we have a bunch of very passionate, driven staff. Sandia is interesting too, Doug. In my 2 years here, it's not uncommon for me to talk to someone who says, yeah, I've been here for 30, 35, 40 years. It is a great place that people tend to commit to over a career. Other labs are like that, but that's been a notable sort of commonality here with the staff. It's a place that's really a great place to work that people tend to stay at for a career, and that's a good thing.
Okay. All right, Doug. Very good. Thanks for your insights. We've been with Doug Kothe of Sandia National Labs. And Doug, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Doug. It's always good to talk to you, and appreciate the discussion.